Welcome back to Senior Savvy Cannabis. I'm Katherine Goldberg. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Jason Thone for the second time of Curo Cannabis. Our first conversation got a lot of attention, and the consensus was that Jason really knows his stuff. Really. So I wanted to have him back on to continue our conversation about cured cannabis. Jason, thank you for agreeing to be back with us. I really appreciate it. I want to get the audience caught up. If you haven't heard our first conversation, please go listen. I was skeptical. I'm still skeptical, but I'm a little bit more open-minded now. So, Jason's philosophy, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a reason we don't see green Cuban cigars because the tobacco has been cured and aged, and it's a process that is an art and a science.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, you get a beautiful Cuban cigar. The reason we haven't made that transition into cannabis is because it's had to be so rushed that we haven't we
Prohibitionist mindset, the whole industry comes from something where speed was an asset, you know.
so my I before I ask my first question, can we just in terms of semantics, just to get on the same page,
Yeah.
is there a difference between to cure and to age?
Well, no, really, it's sort of the same thing. Now, curing means aging properly. So the curing implies that there's enhancements and benefits. Okay. So it's not just old cannabis because you have to do very particular things or you won't be able to cure it properly. Curing is, if you've ever seen properly cured tobacco leaves, it's almost like leather. I mean, and by the way, I would invite you up to Vancouver so you can sample this for yourself. And then you'll see that properly cured cannabis is also almost like leather. It doesn't crumble. It's not dry. It's leathery. A lot of the tissues are matured, and this is a distinct thing. And many things actually benefit from curing, root cellaring. And I'm not the only person that mentions it, by the way. This god of the cannabis world. Sorry, you can't see this, but it's a Cannabis Encyclopedia by Jorge Cervantes, a
Okay.
legend in the industry. Okay. He has a whole chapter on curing in that book. Okay. And, you know, this is something that we think needs to happen to the industry because it's really where art and science meet, you know.
So we have a lot of home growers, I've realized,
Yeah.
just by the comments. A lot of people are really interested in this. They grow more than they can consume or gift, and
Hmm.
they're more than happy to break up the product and set some aside for a long time. Uh, pr Previously, it seemed like people used kind of mason jars and maybe used a vacuum sealer. Is there more to it?
Yes, a lot more. I mean, Dragon Sun Technologies that owns the IP of Curo has six proprietary things that we do to
Hmm.
basically guarantee that mold will not uh, proliferate while you're curing. That's the big danger, right? The things that degrade THC are oxygen and UVB light. So for home growers that want to cure, or anybody really in the industry, this is what the problem is. Why you're seeing a proliferation of all these other products, vape products, edibles, etc., is because a lot of these LPs have produced so much inventory that if you're just storing this traditionally in a bag or anything like this, it's going to degrade over time. That's classically what happens. And so there's a rush to get it into something where it can be marketable. Curing solves that problem. It turns your inventory into an appreciating asset, much like wine or other things that improve over time, scotch. And I know that cannabis people are saying that, this isn't tobacco, this isn't alcohol. Well, it has some aspects of those things, which means it can be improved in the right conditions over time. And this is really what we're talking about is improving the final output of the plant. And it's really a three-stage situation. And first you have proper growing, okay, and that has to, be done well. Then you have the proper drying cycle, which has to be done well, and that sets it up for a proper cure. So it's not like just, find something, throw it in a glass jar. I mean, although you can, in my opinion, enhance it significantly if you do that because you'll remove the chlorophyll. Now, if you don't dry it properly, what's going to happen is the trichomes are going to crack, oxygen's going to get in, and there will be a degradation. However, there isn't that much oxygen in a glass jar, so the degradation won't be so bad. I prefer glass because glass is inert. I prefer it in small batches so you can control it if anything goes wrong. If you do it in large batches, if you have contamination or something goes wrong with your climate conditions, you're going to ruin more, obviously. So I think, yeah, I think home growers, I mean, in fact, that's how we stumbled upon this. 20 years ago, it was a sort of happy accident when we were looking at our inventory that hadn't cured in our or moved in our glass jars. And all of a sudden, we're seeing this yellow, um, you know, uh, cannabis flower. And it was a beautiful sativa Hawaiian strain that I just loved. And I went, oh no, oh no. And, and I took it out and oh my God, it smelled like mango and passion fruit and an incredible bouquet. And of
Oh.
course, we sampled it, and it was just almost beyond words. It didn't. There was no harshness. It was smooth. It was effervescent, and that began the quest. So I would encourage people. This is an art. This is something where people can explore for themselves and the thing is, yes, burp your jar often. You want to do that often for about a month. This exchanges the air until you start to see the cannabis start to become lighter. This is the chlorophyll evaporating. And I think I mentioned this last time. There's three ways in the tobacco industry to cure. I mean, you can use air curing, water curing, or sun curing. Of course, sun curing isn't applicable for cannabis because that would degrade your cannabis. Water curing, it was done in the ancient days of the 60s.
Hmm.
Old hippies would fill their buds, put their buds in the jar and put some water in there and then leave it. And then, that actually can get rid of the chlorophyll very rapidly. Like you're talking about a matter of weeks as opposed to months or longer. However, of course, if you're trying to preserve all the delicate little trichomes on there, um, that is not the preferred method because you're going to, basically destroy a lot of the little trichomes, and then you'll have less trichomes on the flower. So we prefer air curing. This takes the longest, and but it is the way to preserve the most trichomes on the flower.
So besides just preserving, obviously cannabis doesn't exist in a vacuum. So even though I'm curious about how do the terpenes
Yep.
and the cannabinoids um, change over the course of a long cure. And I want to separate that because I think home growers are, a 6 month cure is that's solid. But we're talking about, can you give us just
Yeah,
a
so
baseline
recently,
number?
recently we
Yeah.
just had a guest to do a testing, and
Uh-huh.
we made a blend for that individual that contained a 7-year cured cannabis bud, a 5-year cured cannabis bud, a 3 and a 2-year cured cannabis bud, and that guy couldn't even finish it. Okay, so in terms of potency, no loss in potency. In terms of the terpene, this is what's rather unique. So we've done experiments where we've taken the same Nukin strain, okay, the exact same plant. We've put 5 buds in 5 different jars,
Hmm.
okay, and the terpene profile in all 5 of these jars was very different. Okay, it's interacting with your breath. There's many variables that can affect which terpenes come to the forefront, which terpenes stay behind. Um, the key thing is, of course, and this is important, when you're setting up for a proper cure, I'll give this free IP to people. Do
Please.
this, do this in a cool, dark room. Okay, meaning you want your temperatures to be at 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, very cool. Okay, what this does is it stops the terpenes from volatilizing.
Hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
so you're going to preserve as much more of your terpenes. Okay, and they won't volatilize because terpenes are very sensitive, of course. And then you do that for like 3 weeks. Don't touch it. Hang it. Don't touch it. Okay. Halfway through the drying cycle, you want to actually inject some humidity into the room. This relaxes the buds and encourages some of the moisture to come out from the inner core, and then slowly work it down from about, um, you know, 65% humidity at the start to about like 55% humidity. And like I said, about halfway through, bring it back up to 62, and this will relax the the flowers as they're hanging. And don't touch it. The big thing is do not touch it ever. Okay, because the more you
Solid
touch it,
advice.
the more trichomes fall off. Okay, and then once you're ready, very carefully snip that, put it into a glass jar, and then burp it every day for a month and a half, and then it will be good. And people can explore how to keep the oxygen out. I don't want to get too much into our particular IP, but we made a list of all 97 different molds that can affect cannabis,
Hmm.
and our methodology allows for none of those to actually proliferate. So that's why you can set it up for extremely long cures. Now, the plant, as I said, is still processing, and you can see this in the taste. So if you look at something that's been cured 3 months, it it hasn't converted the carbohydrates to sugars. When you're tasting something that is like 2 years old,
Hmm.
it actually tastes sweet on the tongue. The carbohydrates have been converted. And like I said, I'm not the only person who's studied the science. The Cannabis Encyclopedia, Jorge Cervantes, has said that it's also still processing. And anybody who understands root cellaring knows that certain vegetables are still processing over time. I mean, they're not like a human where you cut us down and we're dead. A lot of plants, if you keep them in the right ideal conditions with temperature and humidity, are still processing at a cellular level. And then we've done tests where, because this is the next step in the cannabis evolution besides curing, is blended tastes. So we've done tests, for example, and I'll give another freebie to people. I grow a lot of organic herbs here in my farm and research institute, and so we took some spearmint, we put it in a cheesecloth. It wasn't touching the cured cannabis in a mason jar. Okay. And then we, 3 months later, took it out. Now, it's not touching the cannabis in any way. Okay. But that was a particular strain of sativa called grapefruit.
Hmm.
Well, when it was blended with the spearmint, it tasted like creamsicle ice cream. I swear to God. Okay. It's still to this
Wow.
day my favorite. There was a nice blending,
Hmm.
which means there's a gas exchange happening between the buds and the herb, and this opens up a whole new realm of blended tastes
And
and
to
terpene,
customize.
right, and terpene synergization, right, which it's not just THC. People who think that it's just THC are woefully unprepared. It's the whole cannabinoid profile, which is why I'm a full flower advocate. I believe that having this full cannabinoid profile is where you get the best enhancement from the plant. And I also want to mention, when you harvest the plant, significantly influences how the plant is going to be experienced. An early harvest with predominantly clear trichomes having a very peaky tetrahydrocannabinol profile is where I think we go wrong, because this creates paranoia, this creates overactivity. If you understand what THC is, it's analogous to anandamine. It's a neurotransmitter, and this neurotransmitter is released when we learn something or complete a task. It's the brain's way of reinforcing the neurons, right? So it speeds the rate of neuro or electricity across the synapses, reinforcing that neuron. Well, when you do too much THC, the rate of neurotransfer, electricity gets too much. This is where people experience, you can get into negative feedback loops, all this kind of stuff. So if you look at the early trichomes, they're clear, indicating more THC than any other cannabinoid. If you look at the mid harvest, they're cloudy white. this is a more well-rounded cannabinoid profile. The THC will be balanced. And then, for muscle, back, pain issues, you want a later harvest where the trichome is amber colored. This indicates more CBD than THC, and you're going to get a much more somatic, much more an effect. So, and this is where the blends come in. By blending certain strains that have been harvested at certain times, you're going to be able to produce exacting profiles for what the experiencer wants to experience. This is where the art of the blend comes in.
This is fascinating. Have you blended with any other herbs besides just spearmint? I'm just fascinated by this, but because it
Well,
seems like it's an
well,
experiment anyone could do.
yes, yes. Mullein is a good one, especially if because it helps lungs. So,
Oh, okay.
one of the things for people who are reticent on smoking, for example, you can blend with mullein, and we cure mullein and we blend that. Although most of the time it's all cannabis blends, right? So we'll mix a sativa, certain ratios with an indica, that have been harvested. And this is another thing. If you take an indica that's harvested at the right time, it'll be very similar to a sativa harvested at the right time. And when some people ask me, well, do you believe in doing things like enhancing the plant? Yeah, of course, through frequencies, etc.
Mhm.
Yes, there's lots of ways you can enhance the plant. Some people have said, well, should you feed it right up to the end? I'm a proponent of feeding right up to the end, but not in a way that people think. I cut the fertilizer, organic fertilizer down to almost nothing. Okay, just to stop the plant from stressing. So much of what the growing and cultivation strategies were all about how fast can I harvest this, not how long can I make this go so that it produces more cerebral effects or better effects. So much of it was how fast can I get it out the door, how fast can I get it to market. So that's where a lot of the strategies, CO2 is a cellular accelerant. Phosphorus is a cellular accelerant. So that's why, if you're using CO2, you only want to use it during certain phases, usually early on in the flower cycle, so you don't create um, uh, too much burnout in the cells. I use it around week 2 to week 3, and that's it. Um, and then same with phosphorus. A lot of people really feed the plant phosphorus because they believe that more phosphorus creates larger buds. Well, this causes early senescence. Senescence is a word that means early aging.
Mhm.
Um, and the same thing if you flush your plant, which is if you're using a lot of phosphorus, is highly recommended, of course, so you don't have fertilizer buildup in your plant tissues. Um, well, that also creates early senescence because you're starving the plant. So remember, what this beautiful lady is trying to do is get pregnant, and you know when you stress her out, she wants to complete that cycle more rapidly. So keep your plant, if you're growing for quality, if you're a home grower that's growing for the best um, the plant can offer, keep it not too stressed. You want to stress it a little bit because a more stressed plant produces a more potent result, but not too much, and especially not towards the end too much. And if you look at nature, a plant that's grown in the soil is never not getting nutrients. Okay, but because you're not force feeding it and you're not having a whole bunch of intense light demand on it, it doesn't need to uptake, so it only takes what it needs. Okay, and that's why, I mean, you can't flush a plant that has its roots in the soil. I mean, because it's always going to get nutrients, right? Um, so I mean, so this is an art form that's developed from proper cultivation with a mindset to going as long as possible to enhance all the things that the particular ingester wants to experience. If you're growing for medical and you want pain suppression, you want it to go late until the trichomes are amber colored. If you want, in my opinion, the most well-rounded experience, you want it white. So watch those trichomes, watch what they're doing, and that will tell you what stage the plant's in. I prefer not clear trichomes at all. I don't like the uh, extremely potent THC effects. That some strains have. Some of them are getting ridiculous, and then you just get paranoid.
I get it. I get it. Someone made a joke that I should call my show "She Only Wants to Talk About Sativas." So it's not untrue. Um, but I realize I'm in the minority, so I'll step back with that. In
Oh,
terms of
I'm
actually,
with you. I love sativas myself personally because they're very cerebral to me and they enhance all the things that a great conversation, music, food. I mean, sativas are my personal favorite as well. But what I've discovered is if you grow an indica
mm,
properly, it can resemble a sativa. And if you grow a sativa a certain way, it can resemble an indica. So a lot of this, what you're coming out with as a final product really depends on how you're growing the strain, right?
it's so interesting that you have genetics as a starting point, but that's
Mm-hmm.
only a very small piece of the conversation.
100%, 100%. And not only that, but I mean, we have technology that's going to change that as well because we have a light system that you can entangle with frequencies. There was a French physicist that actually produced, and this wasn't with cannabis, this was with regular plants. He was able to change growth hormone output, increase vitamin C. Um,
By modulating the frequencies?
well, so he identified the frequencies of the amino acid precursors that went
Okay.
into the growth hormone, produced three 29-second sound bursts of that frequency, and influenced the plant to do that. So we have a lighting system that does similar, but uses photons. Okay. Now,
Wow.
that means you can make any strain into any other strain,
Right.
right? Okay. So this allows you to totally customize the plant through a conversation in the growing cycle. So but if you're a traditional person, yes, I mean, you want to explore what works best with you in terms of strains, when to harvest those strains, how best to do it. And that's really why I love the cannabis industry. It's where art and science intersect. I mean, it's not just like follow this recipe, get this output, like some sort of mechanical template. There's really an art form to this. There's really, nobody can say, okay, you're exactly this long, do exactly this, and you're going to end up with exactly that. That's not the case. There's a lot of the plant in this conversation. And, I know some of your listeners resonated with this, but I know, and anybody who's done their research knows, The Secret Life of Plant, hint, go read that book, that the plant is alive, it's conscious, and it's interacting with you. And when you understand this, you get a far superior result than somebody who's trying to like stamp out a horseshoe made out of metal um, and just replicate it. So, like I was saying, we had 5 jars, the exact same plant, and all 5 jars had something different going on in there. This is also what will make, in curing like wine. Oh, that year was amazing. The year before it and the year after it, not so much. But there was a unique combination of rain and conditions and whatnot, and also curing the wine in the cellar that just brought out something incredible. The same thing will happen with curing.
So a big part of the curing conversation right now is around using growth bags. Growth bags are very popular. Please, I share your philosophy.
Well, my philosophy is that a lot of people confuse curing with drying, okay? And it's not. I mean, so when you look up, industry standard, it's really sort of a way to sort of like, I mean, people think it's almost like drying. So you don't want to use any kind of plastic. Plastic contains an electric charge that pulls the trichome right off the plant. Okay. So glass is the best. It's inert. It doesn't absorb or give anything to the plant. Um, and bottom line is why go and invest in newfangled stuff when you have great stuff already on your shelf when you buy a jar of pickles. I mean, when you buy a jar of pickles, take that jar, wash it out, leave it in the sun, use it to cure your cannabis. There you go. Okay. We are we do have prototype cure jars that use a computer, and it's monitoring the moisture. It's got sensors in there monitoring the moisture. I can send you
That's interesting.
a picture of this, by the way, and it has like a digital readout and all this kind of stuff, and it's in jars which have a tint on them that doesn't allow any UVB in there. Okay, but keep your mason jar in a dark, cool room, and you can do the same thing. Okay, check it, and this is what's fun. By opening it and checking it, smelling it, you're interacting. This is so when people say, "Well, how long exactly?" You tell me. I mean, you tell me what you prefer. This is why there's so many different winemakers. Every different winemaker has a different technique to make wine, and some people like what one guy's doing. Some people don't like it, and so this is the case with curing. There's no one size fits all, right?
Absolutely. I think it's really going to take home growers
Mm-hmm.
adopting this mindset and showing their friends for people to really get the memo
Well,
because
yeah, that's what's happened here. I mean, through the whole 20 years that it's been sold in Vancouver, it was word of mouth. Okay. And now we haven't had one money back, nobody's given it back going, this is garbage. You guys just sold me like old stuff. Like, so once you experience it, you're like, oh my God. And in fact, we had a head chef of a winery come out for an experience. And he called me as soon as he got home and he said, you know what? I've been searching for this ever since I was 16. He said, I can't even believe it. It was like the first time I had my first high and
wow.
everything. The drive was beautiful. The sun was beautiful. The music was perfect. Everything was perfect. What the hell? And he said, this is actually real. And it's like, yeah, that's what people need to understand. This is actually real. Now, I mean, I disagree with you somewhat. I think that it's important to drive it from the ground floor. But listen, there's a big problem in the cannabis industry, and that is, like I said, loss of value over time with your inventory. So we're going to be negotiating with certain interested parties. If you're an interested party in the States and you want to preserve your inventory and turn it into an appreciating column, contact us, okay? Because that's what we can do. So there's a big economic incentive for big, large scale companies to get involved in this, where you don't have to find alternatives for your cannabis inventory. You can turn it into an appreciating asset, much like a wine cellar. Okay. And then particular years become more valuable. This will become like the wine industry or the cigar industry. And if you want to, I'm going to give another little tip. Um, Research Zeno Davidoff. He's the gentleman who started the Cuban cigar industry. He came
Hmm.
from Ukraine. And the way he talks about the cigar and the way it's enhanced through time and proper storage is the future of cannabis. Um, you know,
I'll read
uh,
it.
yeah, it's a fascinating book if you can find it. And that's the whole point. Is there's many things that are improved with time and proper conditions. I mean, this isn't really unique. I mean, so anyway, yeah.
So I I think the concern that some people have, and it might be a misplaced concern, to be perfectly honest, because the Curo process might address this directly. But we know that as cannabis ages, the THC converts to CBN. Is that
Uh,
is that untrue, or is that
That's
a bad?
not true. That's not true.
Please.
Even as Jorge mentions, this is why we say the potency goes up 2 to 5%, because there's three forms of tetrahydrocannabinol: delta 3 molecule, delta 6, and delta 9. Right? The plant elevates the lower forms into
Hmm.
THC. Okay, and if you are actually storing it properly in the proper conditions and proper environment, that degradation does not take place. So, really, there's a refinement of all of the good things and an elimination of all the bad things. Um, the carbohydrates, the chlorophyll, and you get a much smoother smoke. Now, you're not going to turn something that's badly grown and badly dried into a shining golden egg. Okay, that's not going to happen, but you will smooth its edges. Okay, you will, make it much more palatable to experience by simply removing the chlorophyll. Okay. Um, our proprietary stuff, of course, preserves everything. And the big danger is mold growth. You slip out of a very narrow window, and, the way it works is too dry, stasis, too wet, mold growth, too hot, degradation of your terpenes and THC, too cold, stasis. So there is
Mm.
a green box that if you go outside this green box, bad things happen. Okay. Um, and that's the fun of the quest. Go explore it, all the home growers out there. And after a few years, you'll discover what I discovered. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and just for really taking this conversation to a new level. I think, when we hear ideas that are brand new, it's a little bit jarring sometimes to think that maybe we've been missing something at a fundamental level. But I'm really excited to explore this idea of properly cured cannabis.
Fly up to Vancouver. I promise. We'll put you up. We'll get you a hotel room and all this, and then we will give you this experience, and
Okay.
you can see
And
what
I'll
everybody's
report
talking about.
back because
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because you really have to experience it.
Yeah,
But
100%. You have to see, taste, and touch, right? And then once you do, it's like, oh my god. And by the way, this isn't necessarily new. It's an old new.
mm,
People have been doing this for millennia. Okay, and they did it in the '60s as a way of softening the very badly grown Mexican stuff. Okay, and this was actually commonplace in California amongst certain hippie enclaves because they weren't into money transactions. They were into refining this. And also, anybody who's read The Big Book of Hashish by Robert Connell Clark will know that the real way you produce hashish is once you make hashish, you bury it in the ground for a year. There's still a curing process that takes place with hashish. So, in fact, actually, in ancient times, curing was commonplace because there wasn't a prohibition aspect. All the things that we think of as the way to do it have been derived because we've been under a moonshine prohibitionist mindset where nobody's had the time in the area to actually ask the question, what happens if we go longer? I've taken indica strains which are supposed to be harvested at 8 and 9 weeks, and I've taken them to 14 weeks. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that the result of that product, you would not think you're smoking an indica. You would
really,
not think you're smoking a kush. You would swear it was a sativa, and you would be like, "Oh my god!" And in fact, we had this strain called OG Kush. Everybody's probably familiar with it. Personally, not a favorite of mine because I do not like these extremely strong Kush strains. Okay, it's not my thing. I'm much more with you. I like this sativa, cerebral, nice evening glow type experience. Okay. We took this to 14 weeks, and not only was the yield incredible because the plant doubled in size in the last 2 weeks, but the experience was people couldn't believe it was Kush. In fact, we named it OMG Kush because it was so much more. And yes, I was doing things like enhancing it with frequencies. We had specially vortex treated water,
mm,
which basically structures the water, allowing it to retain the frequencies. Then I had a frequency generator that was putting things in like pineal gland enhancements and certain things like this, and fed that to the plants in the last week. They got this water that was instructing it what to put into its experience. And you know, I don't want to toot my own horn, but the comments were kind of legendary. So this is the exciting thing is, and maybe leave people with this, is there's still lots to discover in the cannabis industry. And
absolutely.
that's the fun thing about this quest is we haven't reached the end of where this plant can go. We're just starting.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you just for sharing your wisdom and learned experiences with us. This is fantastic. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised, and we'll have to have you back on. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to. And like I said, you're welcome to come up for Vancouver. Hotels will be on us, and you know, uh, come up and
we'll make it
experience it
happen.
yourself. Yeah,
Okay,
for
and I'll
sure.
report
Reach
back. Yeah.
reach reach out to CIM, and they'll set it all up.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks for your time, Jason.
All right. Thank you. It's been a
Bye.
pleasure. Bye bye.
Awesome. That was good.